Animated movies are, for the most part, innocent, harmless fun for children. However, a number of them hide some very dark secrets, and that can sometimes include some kind of racist content. We're not talking about obvious racism like the kind depicted in Song of the South, we're talking about the more subtle, sometimes debatable kind. In this video, we'll run through 10 animated movies with some seemingly racist undertones. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, it's the best way to keep up to date with all our great new videos. During the video, can you count how many times Mickey Mouse randomly appears? Stick around until the end to find out if you counted correctly.
Stand before the Lord of Song with nothing on my tongue.
Sing. On the face of it, Sing is an innocent movie about a group of anthropomorphic animals, including a porcupine, an elephant, and a mouse. They enter a singing competition that's hosted by a koala who's hoping to save his theater from closure with a successful show. However, a certain group of characters in the 2016 Illumination Entertainment offering are actually quite painfully offensive, as they adhere to an incredibly racist stereotype. Sadly, over the years in the real world, there's been a very uncomfortable comparison drawn between black people and primates, and Sing seems to do its best to bring that comparison back in the worst way possible. The movie features a number of gorillas, many of whom are criminals who like hip-hop music and get sent to prison, where they're depicted wearing orange jumpsuits. In fact, one of the animals who enters the singing competition alongside the ones we've already mentioned is a gorilla. His name is Johnny, voiced by Taron Egerton, and he lives his life burdened by his father, Big Daddy, voiced by Peter Serafinowicz, who wants his son to follow him into a life of crime and eventually become a gang leader like he is. Sing is actually one of the better non-Pixar animated movies of recent times, but this really doesn't help its cause.
I'm talking too.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Back in the early days of Disney, an awful lot of the company's movies were quite obviously very racist and offensive, the aforementioned Song of the South being a prime example. But 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs seemed to be quite innocent and free from that kind of thing. Or did it? The classic movie featured the problematic and ancient trope of pitting the older woman against the younger, more beautiful woman. It had a woman cleaning up after and cooking for 7 very slovenly and demanding men. It had a man kissing an unconscious woman without her consent, and getting away with it just because she found him to be easy on the eye. But maybe the most problematic, none of the major characters were anything other than white, and it contained a lot of very Eurocentric and racist language. The most obvious example of that was the Queen repeatedly asking her magic mirror who was the fairest of them all. Fair is generally perceived as meaning pretty, but this is 1930s Disney we're talking about. So, although it's open to interpretation, it's actually more than likely that fair in this case was intended to mean pale-skinned and therefore apparently more beautiful.
Hey, everyone, look what I found. Blue? Kids?
Rio 2. Rio 2 was the 2014 sequel to the popular 2011 movie Rio. Produced by Blue Sky Studios, it follows Blue and Jewel, the two main characters from the first movie, as they attempt to fit into their new life, having been hurtled from Rio de Janeiro to the wilds of the Amazon. Blue and Jewel are voiced by white actors, Jesse Eisenberg and Anne Hathaway, but the main cast of supporting characters are wild and zany relatives and sidekicks from the jungle, many of whom are rather offensive racial stereotypes, the majority of which are generally voiced by non-white actors. For example, will.i.am provides the voice for Pedro, who's an adventurous rapping red-crested cardinal. George Lopez, of course, plays a romantic Latino toucan named Raphael, and Jamie Foxx plays a very smooth and charismatic yellow canary named Nico. The movie also adheres to that age-old stereotype of repressed Brits that nobody ever seems to complain about because, in time-honored fashion, the sadistic cockatoo arch-villain of Rio 2, Nigel, voiced by Jermaine Clement, has a British accent. Rio 2 got very mediocre reviews. Maybe that was due in part to the fact that people are growing tired of all these racial stereotypes in kids' movies.
Pockets.
Epic. Epic is a 2013 movie by Blue Sky Studios about a teenager called MK, voiced by Amanda Seyfried. She finds herself transported to a fantastical deep forest setting, where a ferocious battle between the forces of good and the forces of evil is taking place. She's forced to band together with a ragtag group of diverse misfit characters, including individuals voiced by the likes of Colin Farrell, Josh Hutcherson, Aziz Ansari, Chris O'Dowd, Steven Tyler, and Beyonce Knowles, who make up a very impressive all-star cast. They all team up in order to save both their world and her own world and return home safely. The movie was fairly positively received by both critics and fans alike, and it was largely inoffensive on the whole. But there was one character who was a little problematic in that regard. The character in question was a bullfrog who went by the name of Bufo. Bufo worked as a race fixer and entrepreneur in the movie, but he was portrayed as a sort of typical ghetto pimp type character. And given that he was voiced by Pitbull, who's something of a stereotypical American rapper, the character could very easily be interpreted as offensive. It's by no means the most racist example in this video, but it's certainly worthy of inclusion.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Sit tight and watch the race with your good eye.
Shark Tale. Shark Tale is a 2004 movie that was produced by DreamWorks Animation. Its extremely impressive voice cast included the likes of Will Smith, Robert De Niro, Renee Zellweger, Angelina Jolie, Jack Black, Ziggy Marley, Martin Scorsese, and none other than Columbo himself, the late Peter Falk. The movie wasn't very well received, and its cause wasn't helped by a number of characters in it who could be considered to be quite racist. Will Smith's Oscar and the two jellyfish characters serve as African-American stereotypes, Oscar being American black and the jellyfish being Jamaican black, for example. And when Oscar is trying to teach his pufferfish boss Sykes a complicated handshake, he doesn't quite get it, prompting Oscar to say, "Don't sweat it, a lot of white fish can't do it." As for the jellyfish, Ernie and Bernie, voiced by Ziggy Marley and Dougie Doug, they both have Rastafarian accents and are animated in a way that makes their stingers look like dreadlocks, and their heads are made to look like typical Rastafarian hats. Those are a few of the many obvious examples in Shark Tale, but there are undoubtedly several more, which is a real shame. Moana. 2016's Moana was almost universally praised and is one of Disney's most successful movies to date. It earned 2 Oscar nominations, and it had a stellar voice cast that included the likes of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Rachel House, Jermaine Clement, Alan Tudyk, and Nicole Scherzinger. It did, however, come under fire from people in the South Pacific, who were offended by its depiction of Polynesian people, of which there were many in the movie. A major concern was the movie's portrayal of the demigod Maui, who's depicted as enormous and egotistical. That's been quite shocking for some people in Polynesia, where obesity rates are among the highest in the world and where Maui is a revered hero in oral traditions. Seriously, he's seen by some as the Polynesian Superman. Disney also suffered an early embarrassment in relation to the movie when it decided to sell costumes of Maui before its release in time for Halloween. The costumes featured brown shirts and long pants with full body tattoos, but they were quickly pulled after critics compared them to blackface. Basically, as popular as Moana was, it created a very serious racial issue, especially amongst those whose culture it represented.
Yeah, so don't ask.
Rule number 2. I can't make anybody fall in love with anybody else.
Aladdin. 1992's Aladdin is undoubtedly one of Disney's best movies and a true modern classic. The late, great Robin Williams was of course fantastic as the genie, but the majority of the cast were Arab characters, and that's where the problems came into play. The movie isn't inherently racist simply for depicting Arab characters, that goes without saying, but the way in which it portrays them as barbaric certainly could be considered to be. And indeed it was. Many Arab American viewers were absolutely outraged by what they saw when the movie came out. After all, the original lyrics of the opening song Arabian Nights were where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. That was never gonna make the best opening impression in retrospect. Such was the level of outrage, those lyrics were actually changed when the movie was released for home video sale. Any VHS, DVD, or Blu-ray copies of the movie now have the lyrics as, "Where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home." Hey, at least Disney admitted their mistake and took action in this instance. The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid has actually been involved in a number of different controversies since its release in 1989. The idea of a teenage girl giving up everything special about herself, including her voice, in order to be with a much older man is one of them. And then there was the fact that the original VHS cover for the movie had a hidden phallic symbol on it, which meant Disney were forced to pull it from shelves. But there were also some racial issues. The song Under the Sea, the joyful little tune sung by Sebastian the Crab, who of course has a Jamaican accent, and his various acquaintances about how life is so much easier when you live carefree and do as little as possible, was fairly obviously a reference to how lazy Jamaicans can supposedly be. That one's open to debate, however. But what's absolutely not open to debate at all are the characters Fluke, the Duke of Soul, and Blackfish, the soulful singer. They both had droopy eyes and large lips, and they're the only characters involved in the song with noticeable African American voices. And that makes them very obviously extremely offensive stereotypes.
Fresh out of zebra.
Any antelope?
Nuh-uh.
Hippo?
Nope.
The Lion King. Disney movies really don't get much more iconic or instantly recognizable than 1994's The Lion King. The movie won Golden Globes, Oscars, and countless other awards and gave the world a slew of catchy songs. In fact, its soundtrack was so popular that we bet you're probably singing one of its many songs while you're watching this video. However, in spite of how brilliant it was in terms of its memorable moments, great characters, amazing aesthetics, and iconic musical numbers, The Lion King also had its fair share of controversies. Who could forget the word sex apparently being spelled out in pollen and dust, for instance? But there was also some racial stereotyping. For example, the hyena characters Shenzi, Bonsai, and Ed, who were voiced by Whoopi Goldberg, Cheech Marin, and Jim Cummings respectively, are clearly a gang who all speak in inner city slang, and they quite clearly represent blacks and Latinos. Moreover, they live in a place known as the Elephant Graveyard. They're not allowed to enter the Pride Lands where all the food is located, and they're quickly banished whenever they cross the border. If that's not reminiscent of racial segregation, we really don't know what is.
Ladies do not start fights, but they can finish them.
The Aristocats. After focusing on some of Disney's most popular movies for the past few entries in this video, we now come to one that didn't quite hit those heights. The Aristocats is the kind of movie most people forget about until they hear its name. And the 1970 offering doesn't help itself by reinforcing several stereotypes related to sexism, classism, and most pertinently, as far as this video is concerned, racial diversity and inequality. One example is Duchess being a white, upper-class cat who teaches her kittens about being a proper cat in high society. The stereotypes are ramped up even more when Duchess and her kittens get introduced to the Alley Cats. They're a singing jazz troupe made up of culturally diverse and one-dimensional stereotyped cats. This includes Billy Boss, a Russian cat who looks like Stalin, Peppo, a womanizing Italian cat who wears a red scarf around his neck and a gold earring, and Shun Gon, the Chinese cat, a buck-toothed feline with slanted eyes who plays the piano with chopsticks while singing the following line from Everybody Wants to Be a Cat. Shanghai, Hong Kong, egg foo young, fortune cookie always wrong, that's a hot one. We'd like to be able to say that Disney and other animation studios have learned their lessons in the 47 plus years since this movie came out, but this video clearly says otherwise. And that's the end of our video. Did you enjoy it? Do you know of any other animated movies with racist undertones? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great videos like this one. Also, the number of times Mickey Mouse randomly appeared was... We hope you had fun counting. Bye for now.